I think it's really essential that somebody in my situation talks about the context. I am not the youngest student in the class. I think that's apparently obvious to anybody. But equally not obvious to somebody is that I am at a point in my life where I am not looking for a piece of paper, I'm not looking for a degree, I'm not looking for something that will advance my professional career. What I really came here for was I'm looking for an understanding of what I have spent 25, 30 years doing for a living. Okay? I'm in the business of making people do what I want them to do because I understand how people make decisions. I've done that on a practical level. I've gotten paid pretty well for doing exactly that. But a long time ago, one of my clients said to me that thing that you do, that thing, how does that happen? And I looked at him at that point and I said, well, you know, I'm not really sure, but I sure hope it keeps happening. But then I started giving it some thought, and as I got towards this point in my life, I started actually looking seriously. What have I been doing? How have I been affecting the way that people make decisions? I spent most of my life in advertising, marketing, and sales, which is all about understanding how to motivate people, how to persuade people, and how to inform them for effect. So the question was, what have I been doing? Because it's been pretty good, pretty right. And that got me into studying books and trying to understand everything. And then I came across this institution. And it fit me like a glove. Because what was great about this institution is that, number one, it is not meant for kids. Obviously, I don't think I'd spend a lot of happy hours with a lot of kids in their 20s. I'd probably be the paternal figure, and I'd spend my time trying to mentor them, and I really wouldn't be getting down to understanding what I'm trying to understand. What I love about what happens here is it's first of all, it's people who are at a point in their lives where they have something to reflect on. I told my children once, you can't get married until you're at least 35 because you bring nothing to the party. One of the most wonderful things about here is that everybody's got something that they can bring to the party. I think the official, lifelong learners, but the truth is these are people who have experienced, have practiced, have actually maybe had some opportunity to reflect on what they do, but it's mature brains. It's a great place to be where there are mature brains. I think the one missing thing in the world is people who have the luxury of actually thinking about things. And that's the environment here. That's the most wonderful part of it. The other part that's really wonderful is, I guess it's a synergy that comes from sharing in a way that I don't think can happen in other ways. When we have classes here, there are lectures like every place else. Some better, some not so good, generally good. But the really exciting part of the learning experience is the conversation. It is tapping into what I call the natural native intelligence of the entire person. Because what we're dealing with is not people who are going to learn something here. These are people who are going to add to the learning they already have, or as in my case, to get a better understanding of what it is that I've learned. And I've learned a lot, but I never understood what it was until this moment in time. And one of the most wonderful aspects of that ability to share is for the first 6, 7, 8 months, I had never really met in person any of my classmates. I saw them as part of what's called Zoom. It's a teleconferencing thing. But interesting, Zoom is a far more intimate and actually a far more effective tool for creating a classroom almost. No, it's not a classroom. It's like a salon. In the old days when people would sit around and have great ideas and great conversations, and someone would say something and someone would tap into the totality of who they are, reach into something that connected to something that somebody said, and before you know it, we're off. So the conversational part of this school is worth 100 times any other schools. I've been in some pretty good schools, but that's the most wonderful part. And the even more wonderful part is that I did not know these people until I met them eventually, months and months later. And the reason was that because they were in disparate parts of the world. I had people in class from literally all over the world. Many of my closest friends, I have to admit, are people who are a full 24 hours. Flip side, of where I am. So we've had classes at 7 o'clock here p.m. and at 7 a.m. there, and they're sitting in Singapore or Jakarta, and it's like we are in the same room. Not just physically, but intellectually, which is even more exciting, more interesting. What I think is really wonderful about this experience is that it allows you to get to know people on an intimate level before you get to know them physically. It's kind of interesting. It's almost the counterintuitive. The assumption would be that once you meet somebody, you really get to know them. That's not true. So I didn't meet my fellow classmates until the annual meeting, which is what we do. We have a meeting. Everybody comes to the same place. We spend 2 weeks working together, learning together, cooking together, being silly together, God forbid a little bit of drinking going on, but not too much. But the best part of it is that I knew these people on a very intimate level, thanks to the experience of Zoom and the classroom. And when I met them in person, I already understood who they were. It wasn't just like a recognition. You know, some people said, "Oh, you actually have 3 dimensions." It was much more than that. It was actually, "Oh, this is the face that goes with the soul that I've already learned to know," which is a far more profound experience. And unlike some of the other people who would normally be doctoral students, I'm at a different point in my life. I'm at a far different point. I think, and I say this in as much, what's the right word? I'm not trying to tout myself, but I could probably teach doctoral courses now because of what I learned, because of what I've done, because of, I've basically been an academic in my brain, so I've always watched what I was doing. It's just an interesting thing when you say, "Oh, I did that, now how did I do that?" But what I really want to do, it's a very strange thing. It sounds number one is I want to understand better what it was that I've been doing all along. So I'm not doing it for the degree. I'm looking at it as a, what the heck was I doing? Now, that would be great, but I actually am a more practical guy. I really believe in applying things. I mean, I have an impatience. I think some of the people with whom by whom I have been professored in my life recognize that I have a huge inability to just say, "Well, that's interesting. Well, that's fascinating." Because my automatic is, and what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with that? So what I really want to do is, having given myself the luxury, or taken the luxury to actually understand what it is that I'm doing, and how I've done it and what it means, is I realized over the last couple of years that I've actually been inventing things that other people have not really heard of yet. I have this concept of precipitative perception. I won't get into it now, but it's a wonderful framework that I've been using with clients for 23 years. I didn't call it that then, but I now understand it is precipitative perception. It is the ability to create a circumstance where a group of people in the room can come together and coagulate around an idea and have wonderful things happen in one day, in one 3-hour moment. How do you do that? So I've been doing that, and now I understand how I do that. What's the goal? What's the goal long term? I actually want to share it. I've amassed a huge body of knowledge. Some people like it, some people don't like it, but when you ask me a question, I can talk for hours. And generally people walk away from that saying, "You really should be a teacher. You make a great teacher." And I, for years, have said to them, "I am a teacher. I just get paid a great deal more than the average teacher." So what I really want to do in the latter part of my life is I want to teach or share with as many people as I can that there is a way to think better, that there is a way to get more out of your brain, that there is so much more than the human consciousness can achieve. And I have some of those little keys. So I'm really doing this academic experience because of exactly that intention. I want people to understand that there's a better way to think. You know, I had a Jesuit education. Some people don't know what a Jesuit education is, so let me tell you. The Jesuits, going back to the 1200 something or other, figured it all out. That there are 3 things that you need to know to make a better world for yourself and others. First and foremost, that there is a way to think. And the Jesuits don't much care what you think, because they'll argue the other side instantly, just for the fun of it and just to stretch you. That there is a way to learn, that there's a rigor, there's a you can't just get up and say, "What shall I learn today?" You literally have to think that there is it's like swimming. You can't just, yes, you can get thrown in the water and you can swim, but if somebody says to you, you know, there are certain moves, there are certain breathing, there are certain things that you do that will make you swim much better. Golf, right? Anybody can hit anything with a stick. Like human beings are capable of that mechanically, but hitting a golf ball to hit it for the distance, you know, you get a hold of somebody who knows how to do that, even if it means moving your thumb a quarter of an inch, that's coaching. The same holds true for the human brain. So I essentially want to make sure that more people are better coached into getting to better places with their brains and tapping fully into their thinking. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is we're so in love with artificial intelligence. It's interesting because in everything else in the world today, organic is so much better than artificial. Yet when intelligence is being discussed, it's, oh, artificial intelligence, it's wonderful. No, it's not wonderful. The human brain puts the artificial intelligence to shame. We first of all have incredibly more computing capacity than the brain, just more firepower. But on top of that, we think in 7 dimensions. Computers only can think in 3 at most.
Sorry.
No, that was a good place to stop, and you did. Okay.
So there's a third.
Yes.
You were saying Jesuit. There's
Oh,
a
yeah,
third.
yes, I'm sorry. Here, here.
No.
Okay, so Jesuits, right? Number 1, how to learn. Number 2, how to think. And certainly from a religious point of view, and absolutely from a social point of view, is that you are not alone in the world. That there are those to whom you are responsible. There are those for whom you are responsible. And that you're not going through this all by yourself. There are others going through the same thing. So even that way of being able to take the sum and total, I mean, think about it, what I just described for you is the heart of education, articulated in the 12th century, 13th century, in 3 simple sentences. Wouldn't it be great if all of us could pull that kind of articulate capacity together? We can, and that's what I want to share.
So are the ways in which the global salon
Yes.
is representing some of those 3 principles?
Well, the interesting thing about, the interesting thing about it, when you start thinking of what we're experiencing here as not a global classroom, which is mechanics, that's mechanics. Yes, my God, I can connect myself to people all over the place. But when you're talking about tapping into the collective native intelligence of a number of people and pulling it together, that's exactly what you get, is what the Jesuits are talked about. First of all, we do that around a rigor of understanding how people think. So that's it, right? We understand that there's a way to learn, because that's essentially what we study, and we understand that there are different expressions. Not that there are different ways of learning or different ways of thinking, but there are different expressions. And most importantly, I think the idea of that we are not alone, being able to tap into the experience of someone who lives in a universe different than mine is huge. It's huge. You know, I happen to live in the East Coast in a relatively affluent town, and I've spent most of my life saying to my kids, this is not the world. This is not the planet. We are not the rule. If anything, we're the exception. And to be able to sit in a room and tap into 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minds that represent exactly that is a reminder that we are not alone, not only here, but just across the planet and the globe. It's an incredible experience. All right?